Laci was very headstrong. She was born in May. She was a Taurus, and she fit the description to a T. Once she made up her mind, she was going to do it, and that's all there was to it. There was no changing her mind.
Laci Peterson was a beautiful woman who seemed to have a beautiful life until she vanished without a trace in 2002. While her story may seem tragically familiar on the surface, a young woman gone missing, leaving police with little to go on, it was clear from the start that Laci's case was far from average. Her quiet suburban lifestyle reflected none of the dark elements often found in similar cases. Investigators found no drugs, no criminal activity, no promiscuity, and no vengeful lovers in Laci's past. She was a teacher, a faithful wife, and an active member of the neighborhood watch. Her charming husband Scott belonged to the local Rotary Club, and the two shared an ideal marriage. Their low-risk lifestyle left investigators with a short list of viable motives for her disappearance, but after learning Laci was 8 months pregnant when she vanished, they were certain of one thing. Laci Peterson hadn't gone missing because she wanted to. Laci's story begins in Central Valley, California, just beyond the shadow of the Sierra Nevada mountains in the small ranching town of Escalon. In the spring of 1975, Escalon had a population of just a few thousand, when Laci Denise Rocha came into the world on the 4th of May, increasing the tally by 1. Laci's parents were still rather young when she was born, though they'd been married for several years by then. Her mother was fresh out of high school when they tied the knot, and her father wasn't much older. Just 2 years into the marriage, they had their first baby, a little boy they named Brent. Brent was 4 when Laci came along, and he readily stepped into his role as a protective big brother. His new little sister was a happy baby, always smiling and ready to play, and the two bonded easily and remained close through adulthood. From a young age, Laci developed a special affection for flowers as she watered, weeded, and sowed the garden with her mother. Her fascination with plants continued into adulthood as well, and she went on to study horticulture, still taking time to stop and smell the flowers wherever she went. She showed an early interest in cooking and baking as well, and was especially delighted to prepare her favorite concoctions for others. Barely able to peer over the countertops, Laci made herself at home in her mother's kitchen, and long before kindergarten she was testing her creations on the family, beaming her bright smile when they approved, which of course they always did. Laci also seemed to be born with the gift of gab, and she wanted to share it with everyone. The older she got, the more outgoing and talkative she became, and eventually, Laci was bestowed with a nickname, JJ, short for Jabberjaws. The name was certainly meant to be endearing and playful, but it also seemed to be a pretty good fit. Laci was confident, kind, positive, and focused, but she was also known to be silly and playful, and she had a great sense of humor. Her personality was warm and magnetic, drawing in friends easily. She joined clubs at school, played on the basketball and softball teams, and was effortlessly popular. But Laci was also effortlessly beautiful. With gorgeous olive skin, dark expansive eyes, and nearly jet black hair to match, Laci was stunning. But it was her smile that lit up countless rooms. Her mother once said, "Everything you need to know about Laci, you could see in her smile." It was not only lovely, but genuine and infectious. That smile and her bubbly personality helped Laci gain many girlfriends through middle and high school, some of which she would remain close to as an adult. In the 8th grade, Laci was encouraged by a neighbor to try out for the cheer squad. Even though she had no experience, she decided to go for it. Laci nailed the tryout and continued cheerleading throughout high school. By her freshman year, Laci found her first steady boyfriend and a classmate named Chad, but he broke her heart just before Valentine's Day. The breakup was difficult, as it would be for any teen girl, but Laci was known for having an especially tender heart. She could watch a movie a dozen times and still be moved to tears during the sad parts. Her favorite film of all time was the 1978 version of Superman, and she'd seen it countless times. Although she knew Clark Kent would ditch his disguise to dramatically shift space and time in order to save Lois Lane, the scene never failed to make Laci cry. Occasionally, commercials could even bring her to tears, and her mother eventually began to monitor what Laci was watching to keep her from getting too emotional. It took some time for her tender heart to heal after the breakup with Chad, but she moved on. Focused on school and friends, it didn't take long for her bright smile to return. As she got older, Laci became more confident in what she wanted and started setting goals to get herself there. She was organized, centered, and always had a plan of attack for success. She maintained an AB average throughout high school, and by her senior year, she had big dreams for what came after. She planned to continue on to university in pursuit of a degree, something her mother was adamant about for both Laci and her older brother Brent. She'd already chosen her major, researched schools, and put together her list of top picks well before high school graduation approached. When her application was accepted by her first choice school, she was ecstatic, but the campus was nearly 4 hours from home. Laci knew the separation would be difficult, especially from her mom, but the timing really couldn't have been better. Although her GPA and academic life didn't suffer as a result, Laci's last year of high school was a little rocky at home, creating some lingering family friction as she graduated and made plans to go off to college. It was her mother's hope that the miles between them would provide some much-needed space, while leaving the source of the drama behind in the process, though things didn't quite work out that way, as we'll discover later. And although they'd managed to work through the worst of their mother-daughter issues by the time Laci went off to school, the underlying problem only festered and grew worse. Her mother became concerned as Laci's departure for college drew closer, worried that instead of the excellent start in the world university is supposed to bring, her daughter might be headed away from the safety of home with some troublesome and potentially dangerous baggage. Laci completed her senior year at Thomas Downey High School in 1993 and spent that summer planning her move and saying goodbyes to friends as she prepared to leave for Morro Bay, a small seaside town not far from her new campus. She started college courses that fall, and her first year away had gone exceptionally well. She'd picked up a part-time job, not only passed but exceeded in her horticulture program, and kept the momentum going by taking summer classes, swapping the opportunity to visit home with hopes for an earlier graduation date. It was the spring of 1994, and Laci was well into her second semester of courses when she took an evening off from studying to have dinner with a girlfriend. As the two chatted over the table, Laci soon turned the topic of conversation to the cute waiter who'd caught her eye when they came in. His name was Scott Peterson. Scott Lee Peterson was born on October 24, 1972. There were no complications with his delivery, but when he was 2 weeks old, he developed pneumonia. He was separated from his parents and kept in a specialized chamber until well enough to go home. At the time, his mother, father, and an older half-brother shared a 2-bedroom apartment in La Jolla, a suburb just north of San Diego. They didn't have much, but they were happy, and his parents were infatuated with their new baby boy. As an infant, Scott's mother would bathe him in the kitchen sink and cradle him as she swayed and danced around their modest apartment. Although both of his parents had children from previous relationships, Scott was their only child together, making him the baby of the family. Scott's parents doted on him from the moment they brought him home. In fact, he'd been held so frequently as a baby, he'd learned to walk a bit later than other toddlers. Scott also received extra attention from his paternal grandfather, Arthur. Arthur Peterson lost his wife a couple of years before Scott was born, and he was instantly smitten with the little boy. Bonding with Scott seemed to help Arthur cope with his grief over the passing of his wife, and he spent ample time with his new grandson, often bringing him special gifts and treats. Growing up, Scott seemed to become a point of pride his parents focused on, and over the years he would learn to maintain an image they could continue to be proud of. Described as a reserved, serious, and even stoic child, Scott didn't shout or roughhouse like other boys. He was known to be generous, easygoing, exceptionally polite, and well-mannered for his age. In fact, Scott's reputation as a perfect little gentleman earned him a nickname as well. In his family, he became known as the Golden Boy, and his mother would continue to refer to him as her Golden Boy well into adulthood. During Scott's youth, his father's crating business became increasingly successful, and the Petersons moved several times over the years, each time into a larger home in a more affluent area. As their financial situation improved, their lifestyles changed, and the Petersons soon found themselves rubbing elbows with the upper class, often on the golf course. Scott's father had long been an avid golfer, and he involved his kids in his favorite pastime as well. All of Scott's older siblings played golf with their dad from a young age. He would take his old clubs and cut them down to fit the kids, and his youngest boy was no exception. Scott proudly named his first new club Slugger, and as soon as he was tall enough to swing it, his father brought him along to the fairway with him. Scott seemed to really enjoy golf, and he progressed with every trip he made to the golf course with his dad. He improved by a significant amount over just a few short years, and soon it became apparent that he had a natural ability for the game. Scott started golf lessons in the 6th or 7th grade and began participating in tournaments through the junior golf program soon after, and even though he lost his first tournament by a landslide, he loved the competition. Scott's parents continued to encourage his talent and involvement in golf, and as he got older, his dad began to practice with him nearly every afternoon. They also committed ample time and money for the equipment, lessons, and travel to enable Scott to compete. Sometimes he would have a competition as often as once a week, and it wasn't long before Scott began winning. By the 8th grade, he could beat his father's golf score. Scott was around 14 at the time, and that same year, his grandfather Arthur came to live with them, moving into their guest house on a Saturday afternoon and visiting his favorite restaurant with the family that evening. The Petersons returned home, settled Arthur into his new bed, and turned in for the night. Sadly, he passed away just a few short hours later, never waking from his sleep. This surely affected Scott at just age 14. A couple years later, his dad encouraged him to sharpen his golf skills even further by offering him a sports car if he could shoot par. It didn't take long for Scott to reach his goal, and though he didn't receive the high-end sports car promised, he did receive a Peugeot which he drove throughout the remainder of high school. Scott attended University of San Diego High School and made the varsity team as a freshman. At the time, future pro golfer Phil Nicholson was the captain of the team, but Scott took over the role as captain after Nicholson graduated, leading the team into an undefeated season during his senior year. As graduation approached, Scott had a mind to pursue a professional golf career, or at least secure a scholarship with his skills. He began sending videos of his swing to several big golf schools, but Scott had his eye on Arizona State University. Phil Nicholson had gone on to attend Arizona State, and Scott very much wanted to follow the same path. ASU is one of the biggest golf schools in the country, and he was delighted when the head coach offered him a coveted spot on the team. However, the coach couldn't extend Scott a scholarship because the school was out of funding for the year. Scott accepted the invitation to play, and he and his parents paid the tuition out of pocket, and he enrolled for the 90-91 school year. But his time there was short-lived, and he was back home with his parents before completing his first semester. While multiple rumors would later surface surrounding his early departure, officially, Scott left ASU after being overwhelmed by the level of ability among the other players, finding Phil Nicholson's skill set especially discouraging. Outmatched by his peers, Scott cut his losses, tucked tail, and headed back to Morro Bay to live with his parents. He stayed there for 6 months while working for his father's crating company before making plans to head back to school. By this time, Scott seemed to have turned away from the idea of pursuing a professional golfing career, though he continued to play regularly. He enrolled in Cuesta Community College in the fall of 1991, and while he had a couple of good seasons there on the golf team, the game took a back seat to his degree. Scott's initial major was international business, but he later switched to agricultural business after transferring to a larger university. His academic performance was fairly impressive, if not exceptional, but it was his easygoing nature, his polite demeanor, and his charm that his instructors recalled above all else. One of his professors was actually quoted saying, "I wouldn't mind a room full of Scott Petersons." Around the time he transferred out of Cuesta Community College, Scott was not only working multiple part-time jobs, but launched a small business with his father. The venture took a considerable amount from his savings to start up, and he knew there'd be a long wait before he saw a profit. With a depleted savings account and an eye on a larger, more expensive school, Scott didn't find himself with much free time, often working 18-hour days. A good portion of those hours were spent waiting tables at an upscale oceanside restaurant called the Pacific Cafe. The restaurant specialized in fresh seafood and was a favorite of his parents, who dined there often. In fact, they knew the owner and had a hand in getting Scott an interview. Scott was hired as a server soon after, and he was good at his job, developing a close relationship with his boss, getting along well with his coworkers, and going above and beyond to make his customers happy. In the late spring of 1994, a fellow waiter slipped a scrap of paper into his hand in the middle of their shift. Scott glanced at it long enough to see that it was a phone number and immediately threw it away. The number belonged to Laci Rocha. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the episode, give it a thumbs up before you go. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, and memento mori.